This is the edge of door view for the Adams Rite Deadlatch. This latch is actually missing a plastic bushing in the middle of the latch. This is normally a pretty good time when this happens to replace this latch, but in this case, because this particular lock is not really all that secure anyways, this is more a kind of a day latch use. They use this when their employees are inside and they're like closing up or just getting ready for the morning. So they're not really interested in replacing this latch, but at this point I would almost always replace a lock like this. The customer is just not willing to do so. But I'm going to show you how to service this lock. First we got to take off this edge of door plate, the trim plate. 2 screws. Righty tighty, lefty loosey. And then just set those screws aside. There you go. For this particular lock, all we're going to be doing is rekeying, but I'm going to show you how to completely service this particular style of lock body. Let's get a good look at these 2 set screws that we're going to be loosening here. And as always, righty tighty, lefty loosey. That should be good enough. You only want to get them out about 1/8 of an inch. You don't want to remove them. You just want to loosen them, and that's it. Next. Now, in order to get this Deadlatch lock body out of the door, you do have to remove this handle, and it's secured by 2 screws first. Righty tighty, lefty loosey, as always. As with any lock hardware, when you're taking it apart, pay close attention to how it actually went together, because you're going to need to know that. And that is the cam on the back end of that handle. Now, to remove this cam in the back of this handle, you're going to actually have to do this, push in the latch, and you want to kind of tilt this a little forward. Well, these things are always very filthy, just so you're aware. And this is what actually activates that lock when it's installed. One of the main reasons why these handles on the inside will fail is because they don't actually line up correctly with these pins. Those pins are absolutely necessary, and they have to fit into these 2 holes. Otherwise, this cam will essentially rotate inside of the lock body itself, causing a miscommunication and things not to work correctly. But if it's in there correctly and the 2 pins line up, as you can see, that is the operation. And it pulls back the latch. Okay, now that the 2 set screws are loosened and the handle's been removed, we're going to go ahead and remove this cylinder and the cylinder guard around it. The cylinder guard basically keeps people from taking a pair of channel locks, locking onto the cylinder itself, and forcing the cylinder to rotate, breaking your set screw. And once that happens, they can just simply reverse the lock, and then they can get in. And these are just threaded. They're basically just big screws, and that's it, with cylinders in the middle. Okay, now the only thing that's really holding this Mortise Deadlatch in place are these 2 screws on the top and the bottom. So we're going to remove them. And always put a finger in the hole just to prevent the lock from accidentally falling inside of the door. Then you actually have to take the door down, flip it upside down, and it's just a lot of work. And then very carefully pull out the lock body. These things are always filthy dirty, so anytime you take one apart or take it out, make sure that you spray them down with WD-40 and service them really well, because, I mean, granted, at this point with this particular lock, as you can tell, it's got pieces missing. There's a plastic bushing that's missing here, and of course we would replace that. We'd replace the whole lock body at this point because it's really on its last leg. But this particular customer doesn't really want to do that right now. Okay, now we're going to reinstall this lock. And remember, you definitely want to have your finger through the door or this thing will fall. Putting these screws in, it's kind of a tedious thing to do. What I try to do is get the top one done first, because you can kind of cheat a little bit and look up there, and you'll be able to see the actual hole that the screw fits in. And then you can just tighten that one down, and then with the bottom one, it's kind of a hunt and peck kind of locate, and it's not normally very easy. So just be patient, and you'll eventually find the correct hole for that to go into. That's not normally that easy, by the way. We just got kind of lucky. But once these two screws are into place, then we can reinstall our handle, and then I'll show you how to rekey some cylinders. Now when you're putting this thing back in, because it has this arm that comes off the bottom, there's a little opening down there that it has to fit in. Now in order to get this back into place, the latch has to be all the way back. So push the latch in, and then you want to kind of toggle it from left to right until you get it back into position. And then you're going to set your set screw to the best of your ability, and it'll rest up against the side of this a little bit just to kind of keep it stationary. We're going to go ahead and take that back out. One of the problems with these locks is these little pins. The levers have to be stabilized with these two pins, and the pins will sometimes come out, and you just hammer them back into place. But sometimes that's one of the causes for these locks to fail or not operate correctly, is they'll actually spin because these pins do not line up correctly with the handle set itself. Okay, just hold the can in place and tighten down the set screw. And that'll keep that in place. Now the handle. Okay, now that we've rekeyed this lock, I'm going to reinstall it. I normally just leave a key halfway out to give me something to rotate. And be very careful threading these things back in. It's righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. And you don't want to tighten it all the way down. If you tighten it all the way down, it won't be in the right spot anyways. So you want to give it, maybe tighten it 4 or 5 rotations, somewhere in there, and then test for operation, and then go ahead and tighten down your set screw. Make sure that this is always with the keyway up, and you want to make sure that the cylinder, the actual plug, is on the bottom of the cylinder. If it's like this, the lock will not work. If it's like this, the lock will not work. It only works when it's straight up and down. There we go. And the cylinder will not rotate out. Now we just have to put our trim plate back on, and we'll be back in business. Okay, now all you have to do is just replace your trim plate. We're going to install those 2 screws. One at the top. You don't have to over tighten those, just make sure they're nice and snug, but these particular screws are made out of aluminum, so if you over tighten them, they just break. Test for operation. Go ahead and throw a key in the old lock. Make sure everything is working. This does have a hold open feature, push the latch in, turn clockwise all the way until the key stops, and it is held open. It's held open just like that. Now to release that, just turn the key the opposite direction. There you go. The Adams Rite Deadlatch.